Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This story was initially posted in Just No Mother-in-Law subreddit, but I also think that this could have been in the Entitled Parents subreddit because oh my goodness, were these in-laws entitled. Anyhow, I do hope that you like this. If you do like it, please give it a thumbs up. Now on to the story. A bit of background. I have a policy of accepting that my mother-in-law is always right. When she said that I couldn't keep a secret, I started spilling my guts. She said that I was a lousy driver, and from then on, when she told me to turn right, I turned left and vice versa. This has been going on for decades, but they only moved to live nearby about 10 years ago, and up until last year, they spent at least half of the year in their own home or traveling. Yeah, I know, they're loaded. So they've only been feeling my incompetence full-time for about 9 to 10 months or so. This week is the anniversary of an event that, while very meaningful to them, and therefore should be meaningful to us, is virtually unacknowledged by the rest of the world. Moreover, it's a really crazy busy time for all the family involved. My husband is a professor and I also work in academics and midterm is upon us. And his sister's family. Her husband and son work in accounting, her daughter is in property management, and tax season and the first quarter financials are happening right now. But none of that is more important than the event, which must take priority over everything else. The narcissistic in-laws will not even consider postponing the reunion-style activities to a weekend. Everything has to happen in the original 24-hour window, beginning with a cocktail party last night, then tennis and golf, and a big formal dinner this evening. No, I did not marry a Trump, but sometimes it feels that way. Last night was the opening salvo. My husband has office hours that end at around 6 p.m, and rarely does anyone show up so late, but the midterm exam was last week. I went to pick him up maybe 10 before 6, and there was a line of students still waiting to speak with him. He scrambled, made appointments, etc. We got out by around 6:30 and walked in the doors of my in-laws' apartment before 7 p.m. and walked into a wall of screeching because we were late. We should have been there by 5. What? My husband is screeching back that he told them that we would not be there before 6:30 and so forth. Then we walk into the main room where my mother-in-law announces to everyone that we were late because I just cannot be ready on time. In fact, I'm always late. I'm just one of the people who has no respect for other people's time. That wasn't exactly the words that she used, but that was the gist of it all. All my husband's protests that he was the one with the appointments until 6 p.m. go unheard. She did at one point tell him to stop covering for me. The exact words. This morning I was due at brunch at 11. It's 11:57 right now and I thought I would type this out all for you. Then I'm getting in the shower. My mother-in-law has called 7 times because she's borrowing my coffee urn for this brunch. That's right, the in-laws are in the 1%, but she can neither purchase nor rent her own coffee urn. B, you said yourself that I'm always late. Maybe you should have made other arrangements. Hope your friends are enjoying their coffee-free brunch. And an update. It's now 1:19. I just dropped the urn off. My mother-in-law called 3 more times and then husband called and asked what the deal was. He was kind of laughing actually. I told him, remember how I'm always late and other people's schedule means nothing to me? He laughed for real. He has classes until after 3, so he noped out of this particular brunch. Anyway, I dropped the urn off. The caterer looked unhappy. She apologized. To me, poor thing. And said that the coffee station somehow never got put in the contract. I told her that I was certain mother-in-law had requested it not to be because she's a cheapskate and planned on using mine and not to worry too much. Then I scooped up my sister-in-law and niece to go get our nails done. My mother-in-law's parting words were, "Be back by 2, we need to be out of the room by 3. That's right, she thinks we're cleaning up. Someone is in for a mid-afternoon surprise. And lastly, yes, I'm aware that I'm a B. No one has to private message me about it. You all are right, there are nicer ways to handle this. Yep, all of that is true. Right this minute. I could be explaining to my mother-in-law why I feel disrespected and why I think she's in the wrong and that she should be more considerate. We could have a whisper argument right there in the middle of our annual shindig. Instead, I'm deciding on nail polish. I'm thinking of something goth or neon green. This is kind of a follow-up to my post earlier today about my mother-in-law and the coffee urn and how I'm never going to be on time for an event of hers ever again. Specifically, she told a room full of people that I was always late and disrespectful about it, and I haven't been on time for anything since. It was only last night, but I'm planning on making this a regular thing. When I left off, I was settling on a dark magenta nail to really clash with my natural ghost white pallor. My niece took the neon green because it matches her dress for the evening, to the degree that any one color would. She looks like a Jewish Cameron Miranda. I'm not kidding, not even a little bit. Her grandmother is going to shit a brick. My sister-in-law got a blush peachy pink because she's a grown-up. While we were having our nails done, our phones didn't stop ringing. The guy who was dealing with all of us, we had no appointment and were in no particular hurry, kept asking if we needed to answer. None of us did. Later, we found out that the calls were from mother-in-law, but also the caterer because mother-in-law took off to get her hair done, I imagine, and they had no one to hand off the coffee urn, mine, and the contents of the open bar. Mine now. No, not really, I don't have the storage to. In the end, my husband dealt with it. Chewed his mother out for not cleaning the urn and told her not to ask to borrow it again. It really is a bee to clean. I got a good deal 15 or so years ago, and I'm pretty sure the pain of cleaning it is why. Mother-in-law was very unhappy and said that I would be back for all the stuff and what was going to happen now with the booze, with the room deposit, and that's when my husband called me. This call I took. He asked if I had agreed to clean the room, etc., and I said nope. First I heard of it was when we were leaving to get our nails done, and when mother-in-law asked me, I said, no thank you. Which made him laugh, because whenever his parents give me a direct order, I always pretend that they're asking if I want something and I always answer with, no thank you. And I'm stopping here to repeat, if someone tells you to do something, for example, get me a beer, get me the baby, clean up this mess, you should smile and say no thank you and go and do something else. Anything else. Take the baby to see the curtains in the other room. Ask another person in this room how her IBD is. Go make a cup of tea. Anything at all. Just don't sit there waiting for an argument. I call it a non-confrontational confrontation because it leaves the orderer with nothing to do but admit that he or she is giving orders, and since they are, in my words anyhow, trying to pretend that I'm the rude one, I like to do it politely. Back to the call. I said no thank you, and husband starts to laugh and asks mother-in-law if she had talked about this with me before today. He knew she hadn't, and she grumbles. That's what it sounded like on my end anyhow. We talk back and forth about a few things, and ultimately he says, OP never said she was going to take care of the room cleanup. You never even asked her to. She, sister-in-law, and niece all had their nails done, so they sure aren't coming back to do it now. Sister-in-law is going to meet with brother-in-law and nephew at the hotel. Niece is getting ready at our place, and we will be back here before dinner. She whines some more and he says to me I'll be home soon and hangs up. When he got home, I learned that he took the coffee urn apart in her kitchen, made a big mess. It's not hard to keep the grounds from falling around, but there is a trick to it, and brought it home clean. Yay. This is what he was doing while she was complaining about how unreliable I was to not deal with the event cleanup. This is a fairly typical interaction with the narcissistic in-laws. They're not pleasant people. Everything is just another step in a negotiation with them. I know some of the previous post comments said that husband should stand up for me, etc., etc. And he does. It just doesn't stick with them from one encounter to the next. Right this moment, he's just getting out of a long hot shower after ranting about them when he got home. He was told to be at the apartment at 5:30. It's 6:55 right now, and we're going to be at least another half an hour. The phone hasn't rung once, so I guess he got through with them, but I don't think it was worth the aggravation. We, me, husband and niece, walked in the door of the event right around 8:30 the night of. Anyone following along might remember that my husband told his mother we would be at her and father-in-law's apartment by 5:30. Or she told him. I really don't know. Either way, we never went to their apartment and instead got to the event as the first people were arriving. Mother-in-law broke away from the reception line to grab husband and niece, not me, and join her father-in-law, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law, who's sister-in-law's husband. Husband ditched the reception line more or less immediately. Nephew showed up from wherever he was, not the reception line, maybe he was just arriving as well, and joined us, me and my husband, and tells us that there was a ruckus when he and his parents showed up at the apartment, as apparently the caterers had stolen the booze from brunch. It took a minute and a half to sort out that they didn't hang on to and disposed only the bottles that were opened, as they can't leave them unattended and they can't transport open containers from one facility to another. Brunch was at the club in the narcissistic in-laws living complex. Dinner was at this other swanky place. I was a no-show to deal with the brunch cleanup, so all they could do was toss it. The story of the caterer's larceny was the talk of the evening. And again, yes, the same firm was handling dinner. As for the evening, I never spoke to the narcissistic in-laws. I tried to thank them for dinner, but they were clearly avoiding me. Me, niece, and nephew were at the kids' table, 52, 33, and 30 respectively, but yes, we were amongst the youngest people there. Husband made excuses at his table and joined us more or less as the appetizers were served. At one point, a man I do not know came over from the in-laws table to my husband and ended up sitting with us for a while and then wandered off. He seemed pleasant enough. If he was enlisted to persuade my husband to ditch me and go back to his own table, it failed, but for all I know, he's just interested in my husband's work. We left when dessert was being bought out. After toasts, etc., we aren't animals, as husband had to work at 9 a.m. the next day, and nephew was leaving on the red-eye that night. He also had to work the next morning, in a city roughly 1,000 miles from these events. So we took him with us. Niece moved to sit with her parents. Sister-in-law thanked me for the mani-pedi. I think she enjoyed herself. It's really hard to tell though. She didn't put up any kind of fight to answer her phone during the post-brunch meltdown, which is a good sign. And that's that. No more drama. At least not for me. I'm now permanently late for all of the in-laws events, but otherwise nothing has changed. Oh, and no more loaning my coffee urn. Husband has learned that lesson the hard way. Last week, I wrote about an annual event in my husband's family. Nothing to do with the religious holiday, just lousy timing this year. And there was a whole episode in which my coffee urn, was a big player. The coffee urn's part in this was to arrive late to brunch with me, the owner of the said coffee urn, and later for my husband to spend X amount of time cleaning it, trashing his mother's kitchen because caterers don't clean anything that isn't their equipment if you don't ask them to, and apparently mother-in-law didn't. And husband had the good sense to know that if he bought it back dirty after confirming that narcissistic in-laws could borrow it when I had already said no, he would spend the next few weeks sleeping on the sofa in someone else's house. Yesterday, I got a call from a friend of mother-in-law's asking if I could please bring my mother-in-law's coffee urn back, as they wanted to start using it at their weekly bridge club thing. I was speechless. Briefly. Usually I can predict what crap she's going to pull, but I did not see this coming. So I stalled and I told the bridge friend that I had no idea where mother-in-law's coffee urn was because it didn't exist, and I certainly didn't take it home after the event, as I was not even there at the end of the event. And bridge friend agreed that I had indeed left before the end of the brunch and never returned. I knew that I could count on my mother-in-law complaining about me to her friends about how I failed to clean up after brunch. Then we both waited for the other to speak, but I have a policy of not filling silence after I've provided a response. Finally, she said something along the lines of, "Mother-in-law said that I took it, and I said I know that the caterers left all the stuff that wasn't theirs in the room, and my husband went and bought it to the in-laws." This is true, actually. I've not even been to their apartment since the cocktail party and the night before the brunch. And then a bright bulb went off in my head and I said, "You know what? Why don't you go to mother-in-law's house and ask to see the place that she stores her coffee urn? This thing is a monster, 3 feet tall and all boxed up, and it hangs over the edge of our closet's shelf by a good 2 inches. I know damn well that there's no coffee urn size hole in any of her storage space. Maybe someone cleaned it and put it away for her? There's a little back and forth, but I avoid the conversation. I'm sure that I was being steered to. It's not her coffee urn, it's mine. Mine. And I like to imagine that my mother-in-law trying to explain to the bridge group that while it is her coffee urn, she stores it at my smaller house. I cannot believe how much time I have given over to writing about this coffee urn. But here goes what will be the final word on it. I'm quite sure. So to recap, my narcissistic in-laws had a brunch, borrowed my coffee urn, and then after I got it back, a friend of my mother-in-law's called and asked that I return mother-in-law's coffee urn soon so that they could use it for their bridge club. Because I'm wary of anything mother-in-law, I denied having mother-in-law's coffee urn and failed to mention that the coffee urn I do have is my own, and settled in for the second act. Several people suggested that my husband buy her a coffee urn of her own, perhaps for Mother's Day, and it turns out that he had the same idea, because unbeknownst to me, roughly the same time that my mother-in-law's friend was calling me, mother-in-law called my husband. All that I know about their conversation is that didn't go the way that my mother-in-law had hoped. The only reason that I had loaned her my coffee urn to begin with was after I had said no when she had asked me if they could borrow it. She then cried to my husband and said that I said yes, and then changed my mind. I realized that I could have said F you all and just not gone along with my husband asking me to please, just this once pretty please, almost a direct quote. But I chose instead to loan it out to her as inconveniently as I could manage, and this was apparently the thrust of her argument of why the coffee urn should reside with her going forward. Other things happened in the background that were unknowns to me, but the one thing that I do know going into lunch at the in-laws last Sunday was that husband was toying with the idea of buying his mother a coffee urn of her very own, and that he had flat out told her that he was not supporting her claim on mine. Everyone caught up? Good. Now to the long part. We are in the dining room of the retirement community. I'm once again stuffing my face with shrimp cocktails. I really love shrimp cocktails. When who should walk out but my friend of mother-in-law who called me. They have a brief chit-chat so riddled with head jerks in my direction and hanging sentences. So are we? I cannot believe that they think I didn't notice. I assume that they want someone and anyone to ask what's up. No one does. Finally, friend cannot take it any longer and just blurts, I know you lied to me, and was taking a breath to continue when my husband said, I lied to you, when? Which took me by surprise. Mother-in-law starts oh-knowing and this is not the time and other stuff, but husband repeats himself and friend says, no, not you, OP. OP lied to me when she said blah blah blah, and then he said it. I agree, someone has been lying. But OP does not have mother-in-law's coffee urn. I looked into buying mother-in-law coffee urn of her own, but I can't afford it. Let me break here to say that my husband and I each have 20 to 30 years in our chosen professions and no children. We aren't as well off as the in-laws, but we could certainly afford a coffee urn. My expression was just as, what the fuck is everyone else's? And that's when he laid it all out. In an attempt to locate a coffee urn like mine for his mother's, he learned that 1. My coffee urn is actually a coffee shafer, as it was made to work with canned heat. I actually knew this, but I had no idea that there was another name for it. Also, I never used canned heat because 2. It was fitted with an external heating element that slides between the carafe and the canned heat holder thing. And apparently, this is key, as this electrical element does not block anyone from also trying to use canned heat, and this is a major fire hazard. As a result, they no longer manufacture the units that I have, but it's quite prized amongst people who prize these things, and it's worth around $2,000. Yes, you read that right, $2,000. We all sort of sat there, just kind of winded, and then he said the thing that made up for all previous transgressions. He told his mother that she had spread around that I had stolen, his words, something worth thousands of dollars from her in an attempt to take the same high-value item from me, and that I deserved an apology. Now, in front of her meddling friend. He didn't use the word meddling, And fellow Redditors, she did it. She apologized, throwing just the littlest bit of blame on the friend. The friend misunderstood, which I know she's going to pay for, but that's between them. And then she asked if she could borrow it. Certainly the only reason I got an apology. I said, hell no, I want to sell it. Can we sell it? Husband said that he had in fact found a buyer. The caterers from brunch. So we sold it. The end. So guys, what did you think about this? Honestly, some of the stuff was just insane. Like, what? At times, the mother-in-law seemed very malicious. Or at least in the meddling kind. I don't know. I did like the tip that the OP gave about the no thank you. I think I'm gonna try it. I don't really have instances in my life where I can try it because thank God I don't have people ordering me about. But it's definitely something that I'm filing away in case it ever happens. I do hope that you enjoyed this story. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe for more stories from Reddit with updates.